Three, two, one, and we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to another Table Talk. I have my very special guest with me again, the creator of a game I am trying to get players for, hopefully on Saturday,
Cool.
Quint. They are, fingers crossed, everyone can get together this time around.
Hi,
Because
everyone. I'm WolfWraith from WolfWraithPress, and yeah, I'm the designer of the game. It's a solo developed TTRPG.
which I think, to me personally, is just awesome that you managed to do that. Because I've written stuff for 5e, 3.5, but the fact you went through and developed a game from the ground up is just amazing to me. What was your inspiration for this?
My inspiration came from like a lot of different places, but mostly I would say I was inspired by writing worlds for D&D 5 and realizing that there were some like paradigms that I wanted to work around that were really awkward for me to work around. I was also inspired by lots of like really old games that I loved that as I grew older and as I learned more about society and the things that make some other people who aren't like me feel marginalized, um, I realized that like we had to start taking, or well, at least in my personal opinion, a more like a responsible approach. So that's kind of the impetus for why I wanted to make a brand new game that just kind of avoided a lot of the tropes that I found from the games that I had played that I didn't necessarily like. Things that made me personally uncomfortable. Like, well, a big one is biological essentialism, right? The
Mm-hmm.
way that orcs and half orcs, like in D&D 5, the initial introduction of orcs, I think that was from Tasha's Cauldron? No. What
No,
was that from?
that I think when they made it a player race was, I think that started with Mordecums, but
Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. I think you're right.
I was like, don't quote me on that because it's been a while since I've read some core materials.
But the initial player race, they had a penalty to intelligence, right? And this has been a problem kind of all throughout Dungeons and Dragons history. Um, there's always this notion of like the monstrous other, this fully sentient society where everybody's evil and worse yet, they're dumb. So they're fine to kill.
But I noticed in yours you don't really have the tropes in your game. You don't buy into that old ideology. I really like that.
Well, I'm glad. I still want to present something that is fantastic and has a lot of the elements of like science fiction and fantasy that people love, right?
Well,
Like
and I
I do,
you do
sorry,
that.
go ahead.
I think you do that perfectly with what you wrote.
Thank you.
I let some of my players know, like, hey, I want to play test this and I want to try getting a stream going of it. And there are a bunch of people who are like, oh, I would love to stream with you again.
Hmm.
And I'm like, this isn't D&D. So you're got just so they're aware, like people are aware, this is not D&D. This is something new. This removes a lot of problematic things like that I discuss a lot. You've made it accessible to people, which me as someone who has dyslexia really likes. I could read your
Oh,
book.
good. Oh, wow. We've never talked about that before, and I'm really glad.
I was just telling Gemma last night, like I'm super excited to have this talk again and bring that up. It's like so you don't have to zoom in like 30% to read it.
Right.
No.
I wanted to use a very readable font. It's in Arial, I believe. So a very readable font, large font size, and consistent aesthetics throughout. It uses the very simple kind of two-column layout. And the reasoning for that is I love books that have like really weird and complex layouts. Like I love art books and stuff like that, where they put poems that are shaped like triangles or whatever. Those are great. But when I'm trying to read a set of rules, right, I personally need it to be really organized. Otherwise, my ADHD acts up and I can't read anymore.
I I 100% understand that. Gemma has ADHD. I have dyslexia, and when I'm reading something that's not formatted well, my brain just tries reading out of order.
Hmm.
Your rule set and the way you design this, and I just want to say I love it's going like as you go through this book, it does switch formatting, but it does it well. What
Hmm.
inspired you to format the way you did?
So at one point in the book, there's a section where you go to the skill trees, right? I think
That
that's what you're talking about.
Yep, that's actually what I'm looking at right now.
So, so there are 12 skills in the game, and instead of progressing classes, you progress those skills through a tree. The reason, so in part of the book, you have to turn the book horizontal so that it's kind of like
It's
like
almost
you're lifting the page.
it's almost like an art book.
Yeah, like an art book. And the reason for that was actually entirely practical. I couldn't fit it the other way and still have a font that was large and readable. It was fully possible for me to organize it so that this chapter was positioned like all of the other ones, but then I would have to sacrifice my beautiful 12-point font through the whole book, and I decided not to. So this chapter is horizontal. I hope it's not too difficult. Most PDF readers have the option to rotate at any point. So, yeah.
Google has that option too. Just use
Well, yeah.
Chrome. If if people need to, they could just use Chrome. Even Edge just updated actually to include that option recently.
Oh, nice.
So if
There's a
folks need, they can turn it.
yeah, yeah. I hope it's not too much. I mean, I think that there's a way for me to automate it in the program that I'm using, but I don't know how because I'm not very good at
There's
programming. So,
that also gets really confusing. I know as a programming person, it sometimes goes wonky and might
hmm,
rotate the wrong pages.
yeah, see, that's what I don't want.
Like I love the layout you have. Just
Thank you.
it's and also I love that this really reminds me of I don't know if you've ever played the game Stellara. It was an old D6 game. And when I say what I mean,
How's that spelled?
Stellra. So it's technically Stellara. It was an open D6 system game. Wasn't very popular. The company kind of went out of business really early.
Hmm.
But it reminds me of that because it has that feel of like a steampunk, airpunk kind of game with that high fantasy, but you can also have technology, and you also have the way you did your skill trees. Which, when people watch my Wednesday video of reviewing this, they're gonna see little snippets, and if they watch the stream, they're gonna hear about it from my players. who I told all, like, you guys, I'm going to set you up with characters, play them as you will, but support the game because I I as a GM like that you allow so much world building too. You're not saying here's the world, you have to do it my way.
Yeah, I found that really important for how do I put this? For my sanity. Because I have this tendency to be incredibly granular when I DM. I DM a D&D campaign right now. I used to be DMing two, which was too much work.
Oof.
But I can be incredibly granular with my lore, and this was kind of an opportunity for me to say, you know what, I should step back because I'm creating a game for other people. And if I put in the level of detail that I want and I say to a player like you have to do it this way, then I'm more or less prescribing their entire game, right?
But you designed such, like, the lore you did put in here is great. I
Awesome,
will be
thanks.
honest. You have also the grid maps that, like, the person in me who is like, I like grids and I like being able to pinpoint, like, you're here. Beautifully
Ah,
done.
so something you're going to be interested in. I think you will have access to the updated version, but I'm releasing the PDF with some more pages tacked onto the end, something called an exploration record. And it's literally just a column of hexes and then location and content so that you can write down what goes in every hex as you explore.
That is super nifty. And I've been playing TTRPGs for 30 years. I've seen one other person do that in my life.
Huh.
And that was a book you had to buy, and it had little scratchies. Like, you had to scratch it off with a coin
Huh.
and then
That's
fill it
actually
in.
pretty cool.
But it was also back in like 95, and it was a $20 book in 1995. So
Ooh.
1995 $20 is like 200 today dollars.
Hmm.
I'm like, this is so cool as I'm scratching them, and now I realize I
Can never
essentially
use
spent
it again.
$200 on a book I'm only going to use once. That's a
Oh,
scratch off ticket.
dang it.
Like, I really love the ideas that you came up with here, though.
Awesome.
Like,
I,
you're making it so the players also have a say. You,
yeah.
you
So,
you don't just call it a GM, like, this is what you have to do. You include tools to bring your players in.
yeah. Which ones do you like? Which one should I
Uh,
talk about?
oh, uh, like, what I really love the storyteller responsibilities thing. That kind of just makes my heart swell a bit. Like, you're telling people how not to be jackasses.
Yeah, I wanted, I put it in a very kind of like couch language way, but I do want to make sure that I don't have people playing my game in bad faith because I've heard so many horror stories of people who come to a game of, let's say, like D&D, and they have a DM who who I mean, sure, they might understand the rules, but they use the rules as a bludgeon, or like they try to really control the game. Like we've all heard about D&D games on
Hmm.
rails, right? Or I mean, worse scenarios, they start like doing problematic things to their players, right? And I just want to make sure that I have a game that from the session zero, you have a clear indication that you are all playing together and you need to respect each other. You know?
That's what I really love, because I mean, it's right there. That all another thing I love is you give a synopsis on this is how you may want to write your game, write your session. A lot of games don't include how to play this game. I've
Hmm,
played over 1,200 TTRPGs in my life, and Ghostbusters, Men in Black, Call of Cthulhu D20 are the three off the top of my head that actually include a little synopsis on here's how you play the game as both a player and a GM.
hmm.
And you have that right there.
Wow.
This is how
I'm
you can play our game or your
I
game.
f- I found that really really necessary. A lot of the bigger, I mean, I know D&D 5 does it, but that game has the advantage of having three big books, right? And one of
Hmm.
them is literally this is for the DMs, this is how you play. And I felt like I needed something like that. It's pretty concise in the book, but I feel like it goes through everything you need to do, right? And I laid it out in like a very simple instruction way, in a way that is step by step.
And it's very well done.
Thank you.
It's not just, I mean, I know everybody knows D&D, but D&D also can confuse people
Hmm,
because it's not concise. And here's how you create a character. It's to create a character, do X, but then we're going to go into every single character you can create. And yours is to create a character, do XYZ.
hmm.
And now you can get into the archetypes and what kind of character do you want to be. You really did an awesome job. And I speak to this as a Grognar who started playing in first edition
Well,
of
yeah, you have thousands of different games under your belt, so
of
this is high praise, I
of
guess. Yeah.
of taking it and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna compress 30 hours of character creation, so you can sit down and talk with your GM, talk with the storyteller, to make the character you want."
Right, yeah. I I feel like Quint has a very, very in-depth session zero, right? Which includes, like, if you include the world sheet, which is essentially like all of the canon stuff you want to include, the safety tools that you feel like you'll need with your group, right? Your limits, the things that you definitely don't want to have in the game, which I find really important.
Mm.
Uh, and then after that, you can immediately go into character creation, which is a step that the storyteller can actually participate in because all of the monsters and enemies you encounter in Quint use exactly the same system of building as the players. So you do it all at the same time, right? You can even be like, well, you know, COVID allowing, sitting all at the same table, right? And doing it together.
Hopefully, one day I can do that again. Like I kind of miss sitting at a table with folks
Oh man.
and it just being able to sit down, crack open a soda, and play and roll my dice with other people rather than just being me and Gemma rolling dice together while we're on a
Mhm.
call with friends. One day.
And there's yeah, absolutely. There's also like another thing. This is completely off topic, by the way. But there's another thing that I notice with like this kind of online atmosphere that we have now is that you can't talk while other people are talking. So you can't have a conversation that's organic. You have to be taking turns,
I've
which makes the game very different.
It really does. Me and a few friends, uh, we've been playing together since '95. We just decided we're going to do a play by post because we found it hard to just have an organic conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different atmosphere I think that we're in right now. And I do absolutely understand what you're saying when you say you miss it, because I definitely miss it too.
I miss being able to just sit down and like meet a random stranger, like we met on Twitter, and just be like, "Hey, I'm Callan. So, what character are you playing today?" And nowadays, I'm a forever GM,
Mm.
so now it's, "Hey, I'm Callan. What character do you want to play online through Discord?" And people like, "What are your roles?" We're gonna talk about that in session 0. I have had so many
But yeah.
people ask me what a session 0 is lately. I'm
Mm,
like,
that's interesting.
"Mm,
I
I,
guess I live in a bit of like a Twitter bubble because everyone I know in the TTRPG space knows exactly what a session 0 is.
it's a uh one of my friends brought his younger siblings into the TTRPG sphere, and they don't know what a session 0 was, and they're the players who I want to introduce to Quint. It's like, oh, they're not poisoned by D&D or Shadowrun or Call of Cthulhu or any of those other games. So they don't have an expectation of what the game will be.
Hmm.
But when I mentioned session 0, it's like, I've never heard of that. Is that like a guild raid?
Ooh, ooh, oh, the
I'm
video
like,
gamification.
I'm like, oh, oh, my heart. Like, no, session 0 is where we talk about the rules, and you tell me what your hard limits are, your X cards. What's an X card?
Hmm.
Like safety tools. Oh, you mean
Safety
a
tool.
safe word? Yes, let's call it that.
My God. Were these kids too? I don't
Oh,
understand the generation
the,
these days.
they're
Kids these days.
between the ages of 18 and 22.
Oh, okay. So they're not kids. Okay.
They're
Okay. Okay.
they're they're pretty much kids, but they're adult kids, but they've never
In
played.
comparison to you and me, yeah,
Yeah.
those are kids.
I mean, hell, I think most of Twitter is kids compared to us, honestly. Because I learned recently through Hope's Discord, I'm one of the older people there. And I was like, "Aw."
Mhm.
I'm one of the 5 old people.
Come, listen to my tales of the yonder days.
I'm like, actually, when people hear how long I've been playing TTRPGs, they're like, "You're old." I'm 2 years older than you.
Mm, mm, mm.
That was funny when I interviewed Rex and he said that. He's like, "Oh my God, you must be ancient."
You've just been playing for a long time.
Like,
You
Rex,
picked it up early and then,
I started playing with my dad when I was 3. Like,
well, there you go.
so
Yeah.
so I've had experience, but I'm not one of those people who's like, "Oh, I know more than you." It's like we all know different stuff. I forget rules all the damn time.
Oh,
Like,
for sure. And I mean, that was kind of important to me in Quint to at points say like the rules are the rules, but you should be flexible with them, right?
I
Like
really enjoy
try
that.
to write a
Mm.
story more than play a war game. You know what I mean?
I do. I think most people, like, I mean, you have it right in elements of plot, writing the story. You have
That
an
can be so
entire
messy.
section on writing the story of the game rather than focusing on the rules.
Do 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 do.
Like,
How to write a session.
and I really like that. And I'm rewriting my own big TTRPG thing. But when I was reading through Quinn, I was like, I should take some notes from here. I wrote it out as if I were running the game. But if I gave it to you to run, it'd be very different because you run games different than I would.
Yeah, everybody has different tastes, everybody has different influences, right? I tried to make that section really generic, and I will be honest, it is an idea that's cribbed from like writing communities, it's cribbed from, people who analyze literature and stuff like that. The elements of plot is like largely considered to be a way to analyze plots, but I wanted to provide a way for storytellers of Quint to have an idea of how to write a story, because not everybody, especially if they're sitting down and this is like their first time being a storyteller or a DM, they don't know how to write a story. They can crib from stories that they've heard before, but that really only goes so far, right? Especially if you're playing with players who know where you're stealing your ideas from.
Yeah, but also you're inspiring people with to develop their own story. Like, just
Right. Yeah.
borrow from something else, but make it yours.
Yeah, I think I say actually at one point when I'm describing the archetype system that I have, that, if you can't come up with an idea that's very broad, like brute, right? I don't want to play, you can't think about a brute or like a mystic. If you can't think of an idea that's very broad, think about a character you really like, right? And then strip away the personality and just find the things that you like. Like, I don't know what to play. I want to play Naruto, right?
And
So, what am I going to call that? I'm going to call that a young ninja, and that's going to be my archetype. And then I look through the skills and I decide how many, like, what powers I can take. Eventually, when I have enough points, that will make me like Naruto, right?
and that's why I really like your game. So I'm super excited that I have friends who want to play it on stream with me, even though they have no idea what they're walking into. Because I took some leads from your how to write the story. But as you mentioned, like I did steal some ideas from Chrono Trigger. So they're essentially playing Chrono Trigger and Quint. They don't follow me on YouTube,
Your
the
secret
jerks.
is safe with me. Your secret is safe with me.
I'm like, oh, guys, would you like to try this new game with me? Yeah, I'll make some characters for you. I'll send you the sheets this weekend for session 0, and we'll schedule a time to record it. And Gemma was like, I know what you're doing. Like, this is just Chrono Trigger. Like, don't share that with the others yet. I want them to be surprised.
Nobody
Like,
has to know.
like,
And this is the fun thing about like just being honest and open with the fact that sometimes we crib from other mediums. Like you can say, yeah, I'm doing a Chrono Trigger, but it's not Chrono Trigger because you are role playing, right? And things are going to happen organically with your players that are going to
at,
make it a story that isn't exactly like Chrono Trigger.
exactly. Like, I don't know where they're gonna go with this. The idea is they're going to travel back in time from a fair. What do they do from there?
Nice.
I don't know. They're gonna tell me what they do because it's their world too. Like, I like that you kind of include that in your story building. That you it's collaborative story building. I'm not responsible for the entire world.
Right. On on one of the sheets, the principal sheets that I have, it's called the world sheet, but at the very top it says our world.
And,
And it's supposed to be the world not just for the DM, but the whole playgroup. This is everybody's world that you're all playing in. It's your big sandbox. Another thing I really wanted to emphasize in that way was the fact that in Quint there really aren't any permanent DMs. If you are a player, the rules I think hopefully are simple enough so that you
Mhm.
will eventually be able to run a session. And I want to encourage players to say, "Hey, I'd like to run a one shot." And it still be fully canon, right? You're maybe some of you are using the same characters, some of you are using new characters, and
And
in an
you
ideal world, you would rotate around the table about who's telling stories when.
and you include great rules for that too. It's actually a point I was going to bring up. It's like I love the if you're becoming a storyteller, then you give a description on how to become a storyteller from a player. If you're a storyteller becoming a player, this is how you can transition. We don't have a lot of that.
Hmm,
A lot of I don't know any other TTRPG that actually mentions it's okay to rotate in and out if you want. Even D&D, you're expected to always be the GM.
right.
Call of Cthulhu,
D&D,
VTM, you're expected to be the storyteller forever.
forever.
But your game, it gives an out. It's like if I said, "Hey, I'm feeling wiped this week. I really can't run a game." One of my players could say, "Oh, I
I'll do
have an
it.
idea. I want to pick up. Here's a player. Here's a character for you because you encourage it in your game for that
Yeah,
collaborative system. Not I I know unpopular opinion, and I've mentioned this on a few different threads, but 5e is going back to that old idea of GM versus player, and I'm not here
yeah.
for it honestly.
I found fourth edition was better in that respect. Fifth edition, well, this is gonna get me in trouble. TTRPGs in general have a problem with auteurism,
Mm,
where DMs, for example,
mm,
feel like they are writers of an epic story. And honestly, having experienced DMing, that is kind of the case, right? I need to create a beautiful and epic story for my players that they can slowly unveil over time. And it does at times feel like it is my story because of the way that I have to have them interact with different story beats to continue the story moving forward towards an end goal, right?
yeah,
But
I
I
can agree
don't
there.
I don't I don't necessarily like that. I
I
feel like yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like that's expected though nowadays. Like you need an end goal. You can't just have fun and get there when you get there. People
Right.
want they treat it like it's episodic rather than we're sitting down to have fun as friends.
Yeah, and the auteurism and the prominence of like critical role has really kind of increased that. I mean, call it the Matthew Mercer effect, but I feel like it wasn't just Matthew Mercer, right? Because he
No,
learned it from somewhere as well. You know what I mean? It's just kind of always actually been like that.
I
But with fifth edition, it's just like stronger.
I hate to say it. When I used to stream, I had a show called Tabletop Treasure Trove. We kind of added to that because we did seasons of our show for about 8 years. I'm kind of responsible for that ideology, and I feel bad. Like
I don't
as a person, feel bad that
I don't think that you should.
I helped people think that was how you should play the game, rather than them listening to us at the end of the episode saying, The important thing here is you all have fun. And
Yeah, okay. I get
pe-
that.
people tended to tune out in the last 3 minutes while we were doing our goodbyes. So they just saw us doing episodes week to week, 2, 3 episodes a week, and thought that's how we should play the game. And now I'm trying to do differently, where I don't want that idea of this is how we should play our game. No, I want my players to come in laughing, smiling, having fun with a new game. Because if they're in a good mood, I'm in a good mood. The viewers will be in a good mood. They're going to see a bunch of friends having fun.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
that
not.
makes sense, but also it's really kind of inspiring how you are so, how do I put this? Like willing to engage with something you feel was a mistake that you made.
I I will I will always admit make a mistake. And back then we were pre-critical role. We started off when Twitch first started, and I was like, oh darn. I Looking back on it, I was kind of a jackass.
Well,
Oh,
hindsight's always 2020.
mm,
You know what I mean?
oh, so one thing I wanted to, I am dying to know, when you were developing Quint, what was one thing you most wanted this game to become?
Ooh, that's a very deep question. I want this game to provide opportunities for people uh, to experience role playing in a different way. Um, like I said at the very beginning, my main impetus was I wanted to get rid of all of the like problematic elements that I didn't like personally. Uh, but what I think I want most of all is to encourage people to utilize their creativity in a way that isn't pre-prescribed. Essentially, I'm hoping that Quint trains people to be their own fantasy writers, their own storytellers, their own science fiction authors. I'm hoping that it can show to certain people who don't feel like they're creative that they can be creative, that it's not as hard as some people make it out to seem.
That um, I need a moment because uh, you got me tearing up over here because this game encompasses all of that, and I am very honored that we got to sit and chat again about your game. I know you got to go soon, and uh, wow,
Well, I mean,
just
it's
I'm
high praise, honestly, coming from you.
because that's just got me tearing up that you developed a game not just for folks who want to play, but you developed a game solo that encompasses everything I believe in fully, of accessibility, of just letting people be themselves. Thank you from the
Hell
bottom of
yeah.
my heart.
Hell yeah, man.
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm really glad that I've got this thing that you can play with.
And I know you have to go, my friend. Everyone, check out Quint. It's going to be the game of a generation. I feel it's going to be a game that you're going to look at like this is not D&D. This is something better. It was so great getting to sit down and chat with you again. And this time, my hard drive will not screw up on us.
Fingers crossed. So
Thank thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to shout out or plug while we're here?
absolutely. Quint right now, we've been talking about it as if it's fully done, but it isn't. It's actually in beta, and I have the beta available on itch.io. The reason is because I am itch funding the game. So by buying the beta, you are helping me afford things like sensitivity reading, interior art, which all isn't there yet, but will be, additional rules, additional adventures, things like that. And of course, you will have my undying appreciation. However, the game right now, even in beta, is 170 pages long, and has more than enough, I think, to be able to play a session and create characters.
And
So check it out, please.
and it has the Callum Hale seal of approval.
Oh, well,
Oh,
I mean,
which when I figure out how to make a seal show up on the screen, it's gonna be a stamp of a seal
big
because
stamp with like a epic thunder sound.
yes, because uh, shit, pick up this game. It is so worth it. I and you don't have to worry about sensitivity rating, buddy. I got you on that. I've read through it like 20 or 35 times. Not that, I was trying to memorize all the rules so I could run a game or anything. But thank
Well, I'm incredibly excited that you're planning to run a game. I honestly hope that the game has enough for you to be able to run a game like smoothly. If you have any problems, let me know, and I'll do some
you.
editing, I'll do some rewriting, I'll do whatever
Oh,
is needed.
I'm trying to get my. I'm gonna let my players know. Like these are your characters. I'm gonna set it up for them. Don't have to worry about that. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can do our session 0 this Saturday. Thank you so much for coming on and just chit chatting with me and talking about your game. And hey, man, you have a good one. And
Yeah, man.
if you ever want to come on again, you let me know, and I will make sure I free up my schedule for you
Absolutely.
because I love our chats.
And I let me know when you start streaming because I'm both excited and nervous.
Once I get everyone on the same schedule, that's going to be the fun part because you know how it
Yeah,
is with TTRPGs.
that's the biggest issue.
I get two people who are like, I'm free Saturday. The other two, I have to check my schedule.
I'm free every day but Saturday.
Thank you so much, friend. And this video will be going up soon. So, everybody who's watching right now, look in the description below. You're going to see the links to WolfWraithPress. What you should do is pick up the beta of this game, and you should be running it with your friends.
Yes, please.
Because I'm going to make sure this succeeds.
Well, it's been wonderful talking to you again.
Likewise.